You are now tuned in to the Storm Tracker podcast.
It's the Storm Tracker podcast. I'm Marcus Benjamin here with Frank Tucker representing CanesCounty.com. And Miami suffers another big loss. They give up for the third time this season 40 points, this time to Clemson, the ninth-ranked team in the country. Frank, it wasn't a fun game to watch. It was actually very ugly in the beginning. You thought this was going to be like 58-0, at first, but Miami did fight in this game to make it somewhat of a close game in the second half. It was actually the score wasn't, I don't think, indicative of how this game really played out. I think Miami actually had a chance to kind of make this a one-score game in the second half, but unfortunately they just couldn't execute, as they only registered 98 total yards. 98 total yards is pretty hard to fathom that in today's college football world. 98 total yards. I have to repeat that because I believe that's the worst mark since the 60s for the Hurricanes. They're now 5-6. They are still looking to become bowl eligible this week with their home game against Pittsburgh. But Frank, your reaction to the 40-10 loss to Clemson and just kind of, where the Hurricanes are at now with that loss.
I think that everybody's going to talk about the 40 points that Miami allowed, but if you looked at what the defense really did, they gave Miami a chance. It was 26-10 late in the fourth quarter, right? I know they allow that big play to get inside the 5, but overall the defense played well. Cam Kinchins leads the charge once again with 13 tackles, right? A couple pass breakups, just an exceptional player overall. Probably going to end up being an All-American, honestly, with the year he's having, but yeah, the offense just completely disappeared once again, and it's unfortunate to see because it's with yet another quarterback, right, who showed some potential last week, and you score just 10 points, right? Rooster has 100 yards last week. He has, 7 carries for 10 yards in this game? It's horrible. It's horrible. Like, we can't even get the run game going, right? Like, I understand having injuries on the offensive line and not being able to protect the quarterback, but you should be able to scheme the run game open. If you're Josh Gaddis, that's supposed to be your MO. You came to Miami as a Broyles Award winner who was able to put together one of the most prolific rushing attacks in the country at Michigan last year with Blake Corum and Hassan Haskins. And you're not doing that at all at Miami unless you're playing a subpar team with a interim coaching staff like Georgia Tech, or a team that is atrocious this year and might have their coach fired after one season, in Virginia Tech. And the upper echelon of teams in the ACC and college football are embarrassing Miami on the offensive side of the ball. They can't do anything to move the football. 1 first down in the first half, I think it was, Marcus, right? That's terrible. There's no way to describe it other than Miami has to do something different offensively. I don't know if it's Frank Ponce. I don't know if it's Josh Gaddis or something along those lines, but all 3 of these quarterbacks were 4-star quarterbacks or higher. They were all recruited by some of the best teams in the country. They can't be the problem the way that it looks right now. So I still think they're going to have a chance against Pitt, just because I don't think Pitt's that great this year. And Clemson's a much better team. But if you can't move the football at all, you're going to have no chance.
Yeah, I was disappointed to see the lack of creativity in this offense. I mean, I am one who has been giving Gaddis a chance to really kind of prove himself, but you knew going in the type of defense you were going to face, right? Like, this team has out-recruited Miami for the past 4 years by a sizable margin, so you knew that you were going to be behind the 8 ball of some sort going into it. So you have to scheme up some stuff. You gotta, be creative in there. And for me to see, just on third downs, just a simple run up the middle with Jalen Knight. And I'm disappointed to kind of see those type of play calls. And it's just there's no excuse for 98 yards. There's just no excuse for it. I mean, I understand you're playing with essentially a backup quarterback, a freshman making his second start against one of the top teams in the nation, but you have to scheme some stuff up to move the ball. Like I don't recall seeing a screen pass. I don't recall seeing any misdirection with the run game, which is something that I thought they would do. Maybe try to run some counter or something like that. It's just I didn't see a lot of creativity, and it's disappointing. And what it ultimately will be now, I think, is that Gaddis may be playing for his job with this Pittsburgh game. I think if he puts out another outing where Miami doesn't crack 100 yards total, then I think likely Miami moves on from Gaddis, because it's just the optics are just too bad. It's hard to explain that to the Hurricanes fan base, to the AD Radakovich. It's hard for Cristobal to really explain what the issue is, and for him to be retained for another year. I do think Miami has a chance to beat Pittsburgh, but it can't be a game where the defense wins it. And I agree with you about the defense. I think the defense, it's not really fair for them to see that 40-10 score, because they played well enough for Miami to win this game against Clemson. You caused 3 turnovers, and you pretty much shut down Clemson after those first 3 scores. And then 2 of those points, was a safety. So obviously that wasn't the defense's fault. So it's just really disappointing to see the outing. I'm not surprised with the outcome. You and I both predicted Miami would lose on Saturday, but I think it's just how they lost and just how that offense looked. The fact that Restrepo, arguably your best receiver, and Brashard Smith don't get a catch, don't register a catch. I mean, just these are fast guys who can make plays in space. Just throw them a short pass, just to see what they can do, so they can loosen up the defense and keep that defense off of Ja'Cory Brown's back. I mean, that part I really don't understand. Which brings me to this, Frank. I feel like Coach Gaddis really has lost trust or belief in this offense. I think sometimes when I'm watching these games, I feel like, okay, well, that was a good play call. Like, I see good play calls out there, but he doesn't go back to them when they don't work. You got to understand a lot of these players are young. You're dealing with a freshman quarterback. The O-line is relatively very banged up, and you don't have the 5 guys that you would want out there. You're missing some guys, but I feel like Gaddis gives up on these players during the game, and he did that during the season as well. Like with Tyler Van Dyke, he benched him. With Jake Garcia, he benched him, and in this game, he benches Ja'Cory Brown. Like, I feel like you gotta just let this stuff play out and start to believe in your players. If you believe in your scheme, don't just say, okay, well, this play, they didn't execute this play, so we're not going to try it again. I think you need to try to run it again and start to have some kind of belief in your scheme, in your players, because when you don't, you're starting to lose the football team. And I think that's what's happening. I think he's kind of losing trust in the players executing, and it's also happening on the other end as well. I don't think the players are kind of trusting what Gaddis is running.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. And I think the biggest discrepancy in this game was that Clemson had over 80 plays. So you have your defense on the field for the entire game. And the Miami offense ran, like 42 plays?
40, I think it was 44. It was crazy. I was doing the snap counts and the PFF grades, and I was like, what? That kind of blew my mind just to see the discrepancy in snaps. It was just unbelievable.
Yeah, and the problem with Gaddis' offense when you're only running 44 plays is if you look at when the offense has been successful all season, it's when they're putting together like 10 to 15 play drives, right? And the biggest problem we had is the red zone issues throughout the year, because when he does put these 15 play drives together, right, we don't score. But you can't build an offense based on having to rely on perfection, right? A 15 play drive means that every play had to be, decent, right? Every play had to be decent. And if you have one play that brings you back a penalty, a sack or something like that, the drive is dead. And that's why you see so many 3 and outs with the offense. There's no real big play ability. Like Ja'Carri Brown has a 40-yard run. They still don't really do anything to capitalize on it, right? It's just not good enough. You can't rely on huge drives all the time. Modern day college football is a big play game.
Yeah.
Every time you see one of the most prolific offenses, it is exciting. It is taking vertical shots, right? Ja'Carri Brown might not be the most accurate quarterback, but you have to give him chances to just throw it up to the likes of the Colby Youngs, right? Give Brashard Smith a chance in the slot up the seam. We don't see, is Brashard Smith living up to his blue chip potential? Probably not, right? But is he getting the opportunity to do that? And that's why we see him tweet out a response to Monday's press conference where he's talking about getting X and Brashard on the field at the same time, and he just puts a period. No. I'm trying here, guys. I'm trying to get on the field. He doesn't even give me the opportunity. It's unfortunate. Frank Latson, 6'4", 6'3". His ability is not to be able to get open. Give him a chance. Throw it up, right? You can't survive on 9 of 18 passing in college football. This is not Air Force. This is not Navy. You can't. Georgia Tech fired their legendary coach because all he did was run triple, right? Triple option. You cannot survive in today's college football just throwing the ball 20 times or less. You have to have some big play potential, because if Clemson, who is a good team with good coaches, just schemes for the run and is not worried by the pass at all, you have no chance of winning. This is not Georgia Tech. And I think the biggest issue is they don't utilize play action pass. They don't use play action pass. Even when they have success running, it's we're going to try to throw a short pass here. We're going to try to make it easy. Sometimes you got to let Ja'Carri Brown mess up. Got to let him mess up. And I know he did. He threw a pick, right? And he got sacked. But you have to allow him to get that confidence, right? We've seen it. You saw it to the Georgia Tech game. There was confidence there. He sounded like a leader in his interviews. He was ready to go. He's ready for the next game. But if you can't inspire any confidence with your play calling, that's an issue, man. That's a big issue.
Yeah, it was definitely uninspiring to the 1,000th degree as far as the offense is concerned. But what was inspiring was to see the defense kind of fight in this game. I mean, the fact that DJ Ivey, registered 2 turnovers by himself, and the performances from Cam Kinchens as well as Akeem Mesidor, he kind of, had a really good game as well. Overall, I think defensive line played really well. Leonard Taylor, the second highest graded defensive player according to Pro Football Focus. I think there's still promise, I think, with the defense for sure. I think Wesley Basaint, he had a decent game, but they need another guy, man. They need another linebacker that can really step up. Corey Flagg injured early in this game, so that hurt Miami, for sure. But they were still able to, for the most part, contain Will Shipley and that running game. They really didn't take off in this game. However, the QB run by DJ Uagalele, I think I said that name right. I gave a stab at it. He still killed Miami with the QB run like a few times. It's like that's something that Miami just can't fix, and I'm surrendering to the fact that with one, maybe two games left, that will never be fixed. Miami will continue to always give up QB runs or QB scrambles. But besides that, I mean, that was the only inspiring thing to watch from this game is that the fact that Clemson didn't give up, and they could have easily laid down in this game, and they didn't, and they fought to the very end. But unfortunately, this is not good enough. And unfortunately, this is another indication of how far Miami is from becoming elite. The last 4 games that they've played Clemson, they've been blown out, and it wasn't close. And many could probably say it could have been worse than what the score indicated, especially when you see 447 yards gained by Clemson compared to your 98. So it was just an unfortunate game to watch, through and through. Miami has a chance to redeem themselves against Pitt. Pitt has a very strong run game, and Miami has lost to the top running teams that they've played in the ACC: Duke, Florida State, Clemson. Now you're playing Pitt, all of which scored 40 or more points on the Hurricanes. So you're going to need some offense because likely Pittsburgh is going to score. So you're going to need more than 98 yards to win this game. Hopefully Tyler Van Dyke can come back fully healthy. If he's not 100%, I don't want to see him out there. There's no real reason to get him out there if he's not 100%. But I think you start Jakari Brown again in this game and don't even have Jake Garcia in the game, even if he's stinking it up out there. I think you let Jakari Brown figure it out, let him grow, let him go through the growing pains, so you have a quarterback for the future who can withstand adversity.
100%. And like it's a lost season, right? It's great to make the bowl game, and that's obviously a goal for this team, but you got to see what you got next year, right? And Jakari Brown, you got to give him a chance. You can't pull him out early. You got to see how he responds to adversity, and I think Gaddis just needs to stick with Brown, and try to get back to the run game that they had against Georgia Tech, against Pitt, because Pitt is not as good. It's closer to a Georgia Tech type team than it is a Clemson team. So if you can try to get back to what you were doing just a week ago, you have a chance to get to a bowl game. And hopefully he can scheme it up in some way, shape, or form. I completely agree with you on what you said earlier, that he is playing for his job right now. I still think Coach Steele's still playing for his job a little bit too. Let's see what he does, because Caden Slovis hasn't exactly been, a superstar for Pitt this season, coming over from USC. And I think he's got to prove it. He's got to prove it, because as well as the defense played, you still allowed 90 rushing yards, and that's not even taking the sacks out of it to DJ, right? I'm not even going to say his last name. Can't pronounce it as good as you. But every week we talk about that as a weakness in this defense. And yes, is the linebacker talent not what it should be? 100%. But at a certain point, you have to adjust as a defensive coordinator to what your defense's weakness is. And it seems like the defensive backs get better when there's mess ups from the DJ Ivies and the Tyreek Stevensons of the world, and they don't seem to be the problem on a weekly basis. But every week we're seeing an athletic quarterback, and there's a lot of those in the ACC, be able to get over on the Miami defense. And you can't just say Cam Kinchins is doing well. The defense is right. The defense ain't right. This ain't a championship level defense right now. And I think that the personnel defensively is better than the personnel offensively. So that's a criticism of Coach Steele, in my opinion.
Yeah, I agree. So speaking of these two coaches, Coach Steele and Gaddis, question is will they or should they be retained? Of course, a lot will determine that, I think, in this next game. I think they are both essentially playing for their jobs. If Miami loses, I would guess that both will not be retained. But the thing, but if they win, though, like if they win, they get to a bowl game. Do you think Miami keeps both Gaddis and Steele? And do you think they should or because to me, and the other thing I want to say is that this, although the recruiting class has kind of stayed together here, it still doesn't look good. Let's just be honest. It doesn't look good for recruits to see an offense that is anemic, or to see a defense that can't, stop anything right now. So from what I heard that Jaden Rashada decided to decommit from Miami because of the offense, of the he didn't feel like he could develop in that type of offense, and that is one of the reasons, or I heard that was the main reason why he decided to, decommit from Miami. So that's not the message that you want to continue to convey to the masses, to recruits, prospects, Miami targets. So even if Miami wins the game, I can understand why Miami moves away from Gaddis because of that reason, because you can't, it just like you said, in today's college football, it's all about big plays. It's all about the passing game. And if recruits don't see that, if they don't see entertaining football or see that, if Miami was losing in shootouts, I don't think it would be an issue. And I think Jaden Rashada is still on the team, but they're not. They went through that Virginia game without scoring a touchdown. You didn't score in the touchdown in the entire game, and now you have a game where you had only 98 yards in a game. So I think for business purposes or recruiting purposes for the future of the program, if Gaddis doesn't change, needs to probably look at himself, look at the tape, and really assess his style of calling plays. Because if he continues with what he's been doing this season, I see it hurting the program more than helping.
I agree. And it sucks to lose Jaden Rashada. We talked about that, right? I don't think that's end all be all because you have Emory Williams. I think the biggest issue is they're recruiting the top quarterbacks in 2024. They're recruiting the likes of Josiah Trader, Jeremiah Smith, Chance Robinson, Ryan Wingo, the
Right.
Jarrett Gibsons of the world. If those kids don't see the development offensively or the potential for development offensively, you can keep that 2023 class, and that's great. And it's a building block to helping this program getting back to relevancy. But you got to string off multiple classes to get this thing off the ground. Texas A&M is further proof of that, right? That you can have the greatest class of all time and still return to mediocrity if you can't string it together more than 1 year, right? Like it's one recruiting class doesn't save your coaching staff. It doesn't save your team. It's great and it's a benefit, but it just alludes to the fact that Miami has kind of been the offseason champions on a yearly basis. and you don't want to just be that. You have to develop the talent when it comes, and you have to be able to prove, like on a yearly basis, like the Clemsons, the Alabamas, right, the Ohio States, that you can bring that talent in and make it what it's supposed to be. Right now, I bet if you ask Michael Van Buren and DJ Lagaway and even Zach Wilson's brother, right, Isaac Wilson, if they feel confident in coming to Miami and becoming an NFL quarterback, they would probably say no right now. It's just not there. It's just not there to make them the passer that they need to be. And I think that's a combination of Frank Ponce and Gaddis. It's not just on Gaddis, because Gaddis is working with the receivers, right? Frank Ponce has been the guy that's been developing these quarterbacks. This is not just an offensive coordinator that's working with the quarterbacks on a daily basis. I mean, Van Dyke acted like they didn't even, like Gaddis and him didn't even watch film together until about, week 4? It was like that relationship of being able to break down teams wasn't even there. So that's partially on Ponce too. It's just the offensive staff overall. And I can't blame Maribel for what's going on just because he's had so many injuries. But those two guys need to get it together, and there needs to be a sign of life in the passing game and offensively if they want to be able to keep their jobs. And I know that Frank Ponce is a Mario Cristobal guy, but I hope Mario doesn't pull an Al Golden and keep his guy, aka Mark D'Onofrio, in the program because it's his buddy from home. It can't happen that way, man. Can't happen that way. And you have to continue the top 10 progression in 2024 if this is going to get right.
Yeah. I mean, I could see Gaddis being retained maybe as the wide receivers coach, because right now he's the offensive coordinator and the wide receivers coach. And I think there's been some development with Kobe Young particularly. And I think that's a credit to Gaddis and him developing him. He's the group overall, I think, has been hit by injuries as well. Jacoby George hasn't been there the entire season, but I could see that happening. I could see him maybe, going down to just the wide receivers coach and maybe bringing someone in for the offensive coordinator. But what I am not sold on is Ponce being the offensive coordinator, because we have not seen development from these quarterbacks this season, especially throwing the football. Jakari Brown missed some I wouldn't say easy throws, but makeable throws on Saturday. And if you have, some teams don't even have a quarterbacks coach, right? And we have a coach who is sole job is to develop these quarterbacks, and we really haven't seen quarterback development. Tyler Van Dyke, you could say maybe has regressed or has stayed the same from what he has last season. Jake Garcia certainly hasn't elevated his play. And Jakari Brown, I think, is just getting by with his athleticism and just what he's known since he, was a kid. So I'm not totally sold on Ponce getting a chance at offensive coordinator, because I don't really feel like he's proven that he should take the job. I would be okay with Gaddis taking the wide receivers and continue to just be the wide receivers coach and not call plays, and then just bring in someone else to call plays, because this. I mean, it's Sunday, and the Dolphins are on a bye this week, but I'm always excited for Sundays because I know I'm going to see creativity from that offense. That is a creative offense. It's night and day. Obviously it's the pros comparing to the college game, but there are plenty of offensive coordinators in college that are much more creative or have some kind of or just kind of believe in their players to make plays. And I just think, again, that Gaddis has kind of lost belief in these players to make plays within his scheme. So, we'll move on to recruiting here. Now, I do want to talk about Miami's recent offer. They just offered a kid today, Hector Chavez. He is a player that I saw in person Friday night, Frank, and he is the real deal. All over the field, one of the best games I've ever seen from a player. Returned a field goal back for a touchdown, just several tackles. I want to say he had double-digit tackles, including tackle for losses and sacks. He just had an unbelievable game, just always around the football. 2025 kid, so long ways away from him committing to Miami, but I'm glad Miami did offer this kid, and he is a bit undersized. I think he may be about 5'10", 5'9", 5'10", something in that range there. But he's just a really heady player, knows where to be, maximum effort every time. And we already know about the Columbus pipeline and what they're trying to build there with some other players. So glad to see that he got an offer. Of course, Miami Palmetto was eliminated from the playoffs, so it was the last high school game that we saw of Robbie and Bobby Washington. Robbie had a decent game. Had a few catches, didn't really, go off, didn't really have a huge play or anything. They kind of kept it contained. But the receiver that I do want to talk about on that Palmetto team is Ja'Cory Barney, man. Ja'Cory Barney is a player that is definitely open to the fact of playing at home. I spoke to him after the game. You can see the video on our YouTube page, live from Canes County, to see that interview with him. But other schools are talking to him. He did mention Auburn. He mentioned Tennessee as well. So, but Miami still hasn't offered him, and he is kind of perplexed at it. And you and I, Frank, are a little dumbfounded at it as well. He's been to Miami. We've seen him visit Miami for a game, but they have yet to offer him. But what I will say is that he was extremely dynamic in this game against Columbus. He, played quarterback. He, ran from the backfield. He had over 100 yards receiving. He was just the offensive MVP of Palmetto. And I'm saying this with, of course, Robbie Washington, who plays on the team. So those are my two big takes as far as Miami targets or players that Miami should definitely continue to pursue. Other than that, Albert Mendoza, quarterback from Columbus, had another big game. This kid continues to improve. He's trying to outshine his older brother, Fernando, and he may be well on his way to do so. He threw 3 touchdown passes and just didn't make any mistakes. Also had like a big, I want to say a 50-yard run in the game. He's just a really, really good player, and I was impressed from what I saw from him as well on Friday night.
Yeah, he impresses almost every week. He had 5 touchdowns against Miami Central, most of which came in the second half of that game. Another 3 touchdown performance. He's got a chance to be named as one of the top quarterbacks in the state for the 4M classification at the end of the season. With some all county recognition as well. But there was a few other offers for Miami this week as well in the underclassmen ranks. A couple of track stars. They offered Dwight Phillips, who's a 2024 running back out of Georgia. Dad has got Olympic pedigree as a former long jump athlete. He's run 10-4 in the 100-meter. Super athletic running back. And it looks like Miami's kind of recruiting a profile right now at the skill positions offensively. They talked about it at the beginning of the year. Ja'Cory Brown is the fastest player in this offense, and that's not a recipe for success. You got some guys that have some explosive ability like Rooster and Brashard Smith, but to be able to bring in the type of players that make this offense, whether it's Josh Gaddis or somebody else successful, you need to bring in high potential guys with an athletic profile that fits the modern age of college football that is big plays like we were talking about. And I think Dwight Phillips fits that. Bray Staley is a 2024 receiver who's also a track star. I think he's a state champ in the long jump. He's got offers from a lot of ACC schools, so it seems like there's a lot of traction there. Boston College, Virginia Tech, Wake Forest, and West Virginia have offered. So I think he's starting to pick up in recruiting a little bit. I got a chance to talk to him a little bit, and we'll have his comments on Miami on the Canes County website. So look out for that, hopefully this afternoon. And then they also offered a defensive lineman, which they haven't done a ton of those as of recent. David Palpe out of Pennsylvania is 6'3", over 300 pounds. Probably going to be a defensive tackle, but also play some offensive line. So you could see him as a potential guard prospect. Probably not, though, just because of the high potential offensive line recruits that they seem to be going after. But USC's offered, Wisconsin, Kentucky, Maryland, Pitt, Pennsylvania, Louisville. He's going to be one of those guys that is a riser in that 2024 class as an interior defensive lineman, in my opinion. I did get a chance to talk to him as well. Seems like USC is the dream school, but the idea of playing at Miami intrigues him because they seem to be going after him pretty hard. So, and then obviously, went to a couple games this week. Miami Central.
Tell me about this game, man. Just tell me how it all played out. We didn't even really have a conversation about it. I saw your highlights on Twitter, of course, but just kind of tell me how it all played out.
I think Andy Jean proved that Miami should still be going after him. The kid had over 100 yards in the first half. He took a 4-star corner, Earl Culp, deep twice, over 120 yards on just 2 catches. So I think he proved that that 11.5 100 meters speed that everybody talks about, where he's not a fast guy, is kind of out the window. He proved that he has that vertical ability and great hands, strong route runner. We already know that about him. He had a standout game. Second half was a little bit rougher when they went to a 2-shell on him. But overall, he proved that it's got to be a race between Florida and Miami at the end. Another Billy Napier, Mario Cristobal battle, because there's not a ton of receiver talent in regards to outside threats for Miami that are still on the board. Tayshawn Lyons took a visit to Washington. That worries me a little bit after this weekend. Yeah. And if they don't get him and they don't get Brandon Ennis, it's like, well, what are you going to go? And the transfer portal obviously can work, but you don't want to have to rely on the transfer portal like Manny Diaz did all the time. You want to be able to bring in guys that you can develop over 4 to 5 years in this program. And I think Andy Jean could be one of those guys. Karan Maycock is a guy that I think Miami needs to offer. 2026 safety. I know we're talking about freshmen. It's like crazy, right? But this kid is a clone of Zaquan Patterson. He can play linebacker. He can cover in too high. He is a freak of freaks. And he proved it once again against Miami Northwestern. And then the last kid that I really want to mention is Amari Wallace, who just picked up Alabama. Got a chance to talk to him after the game. Dennis Smith is doing a great job, recruiting him via his coaches. Obviously, they can't reach out to him yet because he's just a sophomore, but doing an excellent job of recruiting Amari Wallace. And we're starting to see, the bigger name schools pop up more and more. It's Alabama. He's been at Auburn, right? The SEC is starting to see, the ability of Amari Wallace. He's going to be a 4-star kid that Miami is going to have to stay on heavy because he is so good. He played in the slot, pressing receivers. He was really the only lockdown defensive back for Miami Central in this game. He did an exceptional job. And despite, some midseason injuries and things of that nature, he's come back really strong. And I fully expect him to be one of the best defensive players in his class for South Florida when that time comes.
Yeah, I mean that's what we have to look forward to, right? Is the recruiting because this season obviously a wash. Of course, we're still hoping that Miami comes out with a victory against Pittsburgh, but it's going to be a tough go. They've got a really good running back over there. Another last name that I'm not going to try to pronounce. I know his first name is Israel, but he is another player that Miami will have to kind of shut down here. But but in the meantime, the future is what to get excited about, because we all know Cristobal is a great recruiter. I think that's the thing that we knew we were getting with Mario Cristobal. And now there were questions about his coaching ability with game management style, that type of thing. And when you listen to his interviews, you kind of get the feeling that he just kind of wants to get this season over with, just like he did with that post presser from the game last night. It seems as if he's just kind of fed up with the season. He wants to get to recruiting season and really continue to build his football team, because this is, let's be honest, this is basically Manny Diaz's football team, and he doesn't feel like these are the type of players that he can win with, and obviously his record shows that. So what we can be excited about is recruiting, and just stay tuned to CanesCounty.com from early signing day to signing day throughout the whole offseason. Nobody is going to cover this offseason more than CanesCounty.com. As you can hear, we are boots on the ground type of guys that are going to the games, talking to kids, talking to coaches at 7-on-7s, at camps. We were doing this before we were officially CanesCounty.com. And so that is going to continue to be the type of coverage that we bring you here on the website and the Storm Tracker podcast. But we'll see how it all shakes out. I hope we get a bowl game. I don't know if we will, but I'm saying there's a chance.
Are you saying there's a chance?
I'm saying there's a chance. And getting a bowl game too, it'd be big for just the team morale, especially the seniors, man. For the seniors on this team, like Mallory and Ivy, it's important for them to finish off their career strong on senior day, and to earn another victory for a bowl game is huge. It'd be huge for the program going forward, for the team going forward. I don't think it'll affect recruiting that much. You may lose maybe one player from this class, but I don't really see a ton decommitting. But we'll see how it all plays out, though.
Yeah, we'll be talking about it on Canes County, and it's gonna be a fun final month stretch for this recruiting class, and then the transfer portal, when that opens up on December 5th. Watch out.
Yeah. And something that we didn't touch on either is that Keyshawn Smith is basically gone from the team as well. I mean, there hasn't been a sighting of him. We heard that he, was on a plane to California, didn't travel with the team to Clemson. So that's potentially the next player to announce that he's officially in the transfer portal. We're just kind of waiting on that announcement. But we expect more. We expect a ton more to happen within the next month, with this team. We expect up to 40 to 50 new players to possibly be on this team for next year. So it'll be a totally different team that we see in 2023.
Yep.
All right. Anything else?
No. Listen, round 3 here. We're gonna have some more content for you guys recruiting wise, and hopefully we get a bowl game out of Miami after this week against Pitt.
Yeah, we'll see. All right, so that's gonna wrap it up for the Storm Tracker podcast. Until the next episode.